If you're looking to sell your property, you can either sell it privately, where you try to find a buyer on your own, or you can use the services of property professionals to do that job for you. Obviously, using the services of property professionals comes at a cost, but their experience, their ability to advise you on anything such as purchase price and the sales process is quite important and serves as a comfort for most property sellers that their best interests are being taken care of. So if you're a property seller and you're asking yourself, how do I go about selling a property? The first thing that you might want to look at is approaching this professional, a property practitioner, an estate agent, as most lay people would know them to be. Now, this estate agent's functional job is to give you advice, to market your property, to find you a purchaser, to introduce the purchaser to you as a seller, and to facilitate the deal making or the negotiation between both parties. Now, for you to instruct this seller to do this agent to do so, you have to mandate the agent. So that's the first thing to remember, is that the mandate is the first document, or the first rather agreement that is reached between you as a property seller and this estate agent. Now, a mandate should be in writing. Unfortunately, there are many instances where a mandate is given, and this mandate is given verbally. And unfortunately, these are the instances that normally cause quite a few problems because certain imperative items are not properly discussed. As an agent, please ensure that you give the seller of the property a mandate for them to read through. So it's not just about legally binding a seller, but it's also about transparency, openness, and accountability. And this protects both parties, because if this is the first time that a seller is actually selling the property, you're going to find, unfortunately, that the seller doesn't understand how this type of sale works, when the commission is due, whether a seller can reject an offer or not reject an offer, whether a seller has to accept an offer from that agent, or whether a seller can use multiple agents. The sellers don't understand this. And unfortunately, going into this and hoping that the seller does, or hoping to exploit a situation, doesn't work, because if the sellers don't truly understand it, it lands up in a dispute. Similarly, as an agent, you want to ensure that your process flow is made easier. So this mandate actually gives you that security so that there's no dispute later as to what the marketing price of the property was going to be, when exactly your commission is earned, and when you're actually entitled to claim your commission, and under what circumstances you can claim your commission in the event of the sale being cancelled. And all these terms are located in the mandate. And I can guarantee you 60% of the hassles in selling a property could be resolved if the mandate was clear on what the agent offers, and if the seller understands the extent of the service offering. This is to avoid situations where the sellers ask for too much and the sellers and the agents aren't able to actually fulfill this expected role that the seller has. And now, imperative clauses are obviously, and I mean, this is probably the most important one, what is the actual sum of the commission? Is it a fixed sum, or is it a percentage? And if it's a percentage, what is it a percentage of? And does it include or exclude VAT? So that's quite an important one, because the industry norm used to be 7.5%, and it's still argued, especially if you take matters to court, that it is 7.5%, and this was the industry standard. But the more we look around, the more we realize that this isn't necessarily the case. And there's a range now of commissions that could go anything from 4.55 to about 7.5%. So I'm very wary to rely on industry norms when it comes to commissions, and I'd rather be very upfront that the commission is as follows, so that the seller is aware and the agent is aware. Now, obviously, you can always agree to a different commission later. And if the agent is able to bring an offer in, and it turns out that the purchase price is not as much as the seller had anticipated, there can always be a negotiation around commission. But see, where this does serve a good purpose is if the mandate, and this is point number 2, if the mandate is clear on the figure, the price that the agent is entitled to go to market with, and the agent acquires an offer for that price, and it meets all the criteria established by the seller, then there is no argument to be made by the seller that the commission should be reduced. And I think this is quite important because it gives the agent security, but it also sets the expectations on the seller's part as to what commission they anticipate paying. So it's very important. Second point, set a price. Anything above that price, it's expected that the seller will accept, and the agent will have earned their commission. Naturally, if it's below that price, it's negotiable and it's still within the discretion of the seller to accept it or not accept it. The third thing that's also very, very important is who can actually sell this property. And there's different types of mandates. So you need to look at the wording of the specific mandate because unfortunately, some of the terms are used interchangeably and they shouldn't. So you have open mandates, sole mandates, and exclusive mandates. And you try to figure out which is which. Well, very easily, just look at the terms of the contract. If the mandate says that any agent can sell the property, and usually the verbal mandates will be open mandates. Any agent, anyone can sell the property. So you on your own can sell the property. You can appoint several agents to sell the property. It doesn't matter. It's all good. In those instances, you're dealing with an open mandate. Now, the exclusive and sole mandate is where you need to have an understanding of. So these typically mean that you're appointing this one agency and you're not allowed to appoint any other agency. But in addition to that, some of these mandates even exclude you as the seller from selling the property privately. So if you find that your neighbor all of a sudden approaches you and says, I want to buy this property, you may actually be prohibited from selling the property to that neighbor and will have to refer the neighbor to the agency in order to sell the property. And it might seem unfair, but that's why it's so important to understand the mandate that you're signing. So these are quite important because the open mandates mean that any agent can market the property. Unfortunately, it also means that there could be stress down the line because we find, unfortunately, that purchasers tend to shop around for agents in relation to properties, and they might actually see a property once, go to another agency, see several properties, and go back to that first property again with a different agent. And whereas previously they had rejected the idea of buying that property, now they decide that they want to buy the property. And again, this places the seller in quite a predicament because, unfortunately, there is case law to say that if both agents were truly the effective cause of the sale, that there could be a case that arises for double commission. So as a seller, be very careful. Appointing multiple agents is a great idea, but then you have to keep your finger on the pulse that if any purchaser walks in through that door, that you find out with 100% clarity how that purchaser came about the property. And I would even go so far as to have that purchaser sign an indemnity in the offer to purchase, saying that if anyone else comes and claims commission based on their introduction of this purchaser to the property, this purchaser will indemnify the seller from any extra commission that might have to be paid. So you understand there are certain complexities behind these mandates, and I could go on. I just picked the top 4 just to make sure that at least people start becoming aware of things that they need to look at. Maybe next week we can have a discussion around when the commission is earned and when it's actually payable, and under what circumstances a seller can back away from a deal, and under what circumstances the seller will remain liable for commission despite not going ahead with the deal.